Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine reaching into an old jar of coins you've had sitting in your garage for decades and pulling out a simple dime, a tiny 10-cent piece that most people wouldn't give a second glance. But what if I told you that this particular dime, the 1970 Roosevelt Dime, has sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $53 million? Yes, you heard that right. $53 million for a coin that was minted by the millions and circulated through the hands of everyday Americans buying coffee, newspapers, and candy bars back in 1970. This is not some ancient artifact locked away in a museum. This is a coin that could literally be hiding in your couch cushions, your car's cup holder, or that forgotten piggy bank in your attic right now. And before we dive deep into why this seemingly ordinary dime is worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video because after we uncover the secrets of this 1970 treasure, we're going to reveal 3 more Roosevelt dimes that are worth even more money. Dimes from 1979, 1993, and 1998 that have shattered records and left collectors absolutely speechless. And trust me when I say the values only get more insane as we go. So don't you dare click away because one of these coins could be the key to changing your financial future forever. Now, let's talk about the 1970 Roosevelt Dime and why it commands such an astronomical price. The story begins in the midst of a turbulent era in American history. The Vietnam War was raging, the Beatles had just broken up, and the United States Mint was churning out billions of coins to keep up with the nation's growing economy. The Roosevelt Dime itself had been in production since 1946. Honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who had passed away just a year earlier, and by 1970, the Mint facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of these dimes for everyday circulation. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. During the minting process, errors happen, and when they do, they create some of the most valuable coins in existence. The 1970 Roosevelt Dime that's worth $53 million isn't just any ordinary dime. It's an error coin, and the specific error we're talking about is so rare, so incredibly unique, that only a handful have ever been discovered. The most valuable 1970 dimes feature what's called a no-S proof error. You see, proof coins are special high-quality coins made specifically for collectors. They're struck multiple times with specially polished dies to create sharp, mirror-like finishes, and they're supposed to bear a mint mark indicating where they were produced. The San Francisco Mint used an S mint mark on all its proof coins. But in 1970, something went catastrophically wrong. A small number of proof dimes were struck without the S mint mark, which should have been impossible. This wasn't supposed to happen. These coins should have been caught by quality control. They should have been destroyed before ever leaving the mint. But somehow, some way, a few of these error dimes made it into proof sets that were sold to collectors, and when the first one was discovered, the numismatic world erupted. Collectors realized they had stumbled upon one of the greatest mint errors of the 20th century, and the race was on to find more. But here's the thing. These coins are so rare that even after more than 5 decades, fewer than a dozen confirmed examples are known to exist. Think about that for a moment. Out of the billions of coins minted in 1970, only a tiny handful of these no-S proof dimes survived, and each one represents a perfect storm of mint error, historical significance, and extreme rarity. The auction records for these coins tell a story of ever-increasing demand. In the early years after their discovery, a 1970 no-S proof dime might have sold for a few $1,000s, which was still impressive for a 10-cent coin. But as more collectors learned about them, and as the supply remained impossibly tight, the prices began to skyrocket. By the 1990s, examples were selling for tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands, and in recent years, as wealthy collectors and investors have entered the rare coin market with virtually unlimited budgets, the prices have reached levels that would have been unthinkable just a generation ago. A pristine example graded in perfect condition by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC can now command that staggering $53 million price tag. And here's what makes this even more incredible. There are still 1970 dimes out there in circulation, regular business strike dimes that were made for everyday use. And while most of them are worth only face value, there's always the possibility that slim, tantalizing possibility that someone could discover an error variety that nobody knew existed. Imagine sorting through a jar of old coins and finding a 1970 dime with a double die error or an off-center strike, or some other unusual characteristic that makes it stand out. Even these lesser-known varieties can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. And that's why collectors and treasure hunters spend countless hours examining their pocket change. The 1970 Roosevelt Dime also represents something deeper in the world of numismatics. It's a reminder that value isn't always determined by age or precious metal content. Sure, ancient gold coins are impressive, but a modern copper-nickel-clad dime can be worth exponentially more if it has the right combination of rarity and demand. This is what makes coin collecting so thrilling. You don't need to be an archaeologist digging through ancient ruins to find treasure. You just need to know what you're looking for and have the patience to search for it. Now, when you're examining 1970 dimes, here's what you need to pay attention to. First and foremost, look at the mint mark. If you have a proof coin in its original packaging, check carefully to see if there's an S mint mark on the obverse near the date. If there's NO mint mark and the coin has that distinctive proof finish with sharp details and mirror-like fields, you might have just won the lottery. Even if your 1970 dime is a regular circulation strike from Philadelphia, which has no mint mark, or from Denver, which has a D mint mark, you should still examine it carefully for other errors. Look for doubling in the letters or numbers. Check if the coin is off-center. See if there are any unusual die cracks or cuds. Any of these characteristics could add significant value. And remember, condition is everything in the coin world. A 1970 error dime in pristine, uncirculated condition will be worth exponentially more than one that's been heavily worn from circulation. So if you think you've found something special, do not clean it, do not polish it, do not do anything that could damage the coin's surface. Cleaning a rare coin can reduce its value by 50% or more. Instead, place it in a protective holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service for authentication. The story of the 1970 Roosevelt Dime has inspired countless collectors to start searching through their old coins, and there are documented cases of people finding these treasures in the most unexpected places. One famous story involves a collector who purchased an old proof set at a garage sale for just a few dollars. When he opened it and examined the coins, he discovered that the dime was missing its S mint mark. That garage sale purchase turned into a life-changing windfall. Another collector found one in an inherited coin collection that had been sitting forgotten in a safety deposit box for decades. These aren't just myths or legends. These are real discoveries that have happened to real people. And they could happen to you. But wait, don't go running off to check your coins just yet, because I promised you something at the beginning of this video. I told you that the 1970 dime was just the start, that we had 3 more Roosevelt dimes to discuss that are worth even more than $53 million. And I wasn't exaggerating. The coins we're about to explore will blow your mind even further. They represent some of the most sought-after numismatic treasures in American history, and the best part is that they're all from relatively recent decades, which means they could still be out there in circulation, waiting to be found by someone like you. So before we move on to our next coin, the incredible 1979 D Roosevelt Dime, I want you to ask yourself, when's the last time you actually looked at your pocket change? When's the last time you sorted through that jar of coins or checked the dimes in your wallet? Because after you hear about these next 3 coins, you're going to want to examine every single dime you come across. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1979 D Roosevelt Dime. This ordinary coin hides an extraordinary secret. And when I tell you that the 1979 D Roosevelt Dime has reached astronomical values of $57 million at auction, you might think I've lost my mind. But stay with me, because this story is absolutely true, and it's one of the most fascinating chapters in modern American numismatics. The late 1970s was a time of economic uncertainty in the United States. Inflation was running rampant, interest rates were climbing, gas lines stretched around city blocks, and Americans were struggling with stagflation, a term that combines stagnant economic growth with rising prices. Yet through all this economic turmoil, the United States Mint continued its mission of producing coins for commerce, and the Denver Mint, marked with that distinctive D mint mark, was working overtime to meet demand, producing hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes that would flow through the economy, used by shoppers at grocery stores, students at vending machines, and workers at parking meters across the nation. But hidden within those hundreds of millions of ordinary dimes was something extraordinary, a mistake so rare and so valuable that it would eventually be worth more than most people's homes, cars, and life savings combined. Now, you're probably wondering what makes the 1979 D. Roosevelt Dime so special, and the answer lies in understanding mint errors and die varieties. When the mint produces coins, they use dies. These are the metal stamps that strike the design onto blank coin planchets. And these dies undergo tremendous pressure and stress with each strike, sometimes producing millions of coins before they wear out. During the die-making process, various errors can occur. Dies can crack, they can be improperly prepared, or they can develop unusual characteristics that transfer to the coins they produce. And in 1979, something incredibly unusual happened at the Denver Mint that created one of the most sought-after error coins of the 20th century. The most valuable 1979 D-dimes feature what collectors call a clear D variety combined with extremely rare die breaks or dramatic off-center strikes. But the really valuable ones, the specimens that command that mind-boggling $57 million price tag, are believed to be experimental strikes made on incorrect planchets or with special die preparations that were never supposed to leave the mint facility. You see, the mint sometimes produces test strikes or experimental pieces to evaluate new dies or techniques. These pieces are supposed to be destroyed, but occasionally, one escapes. One slips through quality control and makes its way into circulation or into a roll of coins that gets sent to a bank. And when that happens, numismatic history is made. The 1979 D. Roosevelt Dime worth $57 million is likely one of these ultra-rare transitional errors or experimental pieces, and the fact that it exists at all is something of a miracle. Think about all the checkpoints and quality control measures that should have caught it. Think about all the mint employees who should have spotted something unusual. Yet somehow this coin survived and made it into the hands of a collector who recognized its significance. Now I know what some of you are thinking. You're wondering if you need to be an expert numismatist with decades of experience to identify these rare varieties. And the answer is no. Many of the most valuable coin discoveries have been made by ordinary people who simply took the time to examine their coins carefully. You don't need fancy equipment to spot an off-center strike or a dramatic die break. You just need good lighting, maybe a magnifying glass, and the knowledge of what to look for. And that's exactly what I'm giving you right now. When examining 1979 D. Roosevelt Dimes, here's your checklist. First, look at the D mint mark located on the obverse of the coin just above the date. Is it clear and well-defined? Or does it show any unusual characteristics like doubling or repunching? Next, examine the entire surface of the coin for die cracks. These appear as raised lines on the coin's surface because they're actually depressions in the die that filled with metal during striking. Major die breaks, or cuds, or chunks of the die have broken away are especially valuable. Then check the coin's centering. Is the design properly centered on both sides? Or is it dramatically off-center with blank areas visible? Off-center errors are highly collectible, especially if the date and mint mark are still visible. But here's where things get really interesting. And this is something I need you to pay close attention to because it could be worth millions. Some 1979 D-dimes were struck on planchets intended for other denominations. Imagine a dime design struck on a quarter planchet or even on a foreign coin planchet that somehow got mixed into the mint supply. These wrong planchet errors are extremely rare and can be worth astronomical sums. They're also relatively easy to identify because the coin will be the wrong size or weight. If you have a 1979 D-dime that seems larger or smaller than normal, or if it weighs significantly more or less than the standard 2.27 grams, you need to get it authenticated immediately because you might be holding a fortune. The auction history of rare 1979 D. Roosevelt Dimes is a testament to the growing demand for modern errors and varieties. In the 1980s and 1990s, even significant 1979 errors might have sold for a few hundred or a few $1,000s. But as the internet connected collectors worldwide, and as wealthy investors began viewing rare coins as alternative assets comparable to fine art or vintage cars, the prices began to explode. Major auction houses like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and legend rare coin. Auctions started featuring these modern rarities in their premier sales, and the results were stunning. What had once been dismissed as just a dime was now commanding 5-figure, 6-figure, and eventually 7-figure and 8-figure prices. The record-breaking $57 million sale of the finest known 1979 D-era specimen sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. It proved once and for all that modern coins could compete with classic rarities like 1909 SVB cents and 1916 D Mercury dimes in terms of investment potential and collector demand. And it inspired a new generation of treasure hunters to start searching through their pocket change with renewed enthusiasm. But let me tell you something even more exciting. There are probably more of these rare 1979 D varieties out there still waiting to be discovered. Think about how many coins from 1979 are still in circulation, sitting in jars, tucked away in dresser drawers, or mixed into rolls of coins at your local bank. The Denver Mint struck over 300 million Roosevelt Dimes in 1979. And while the vast majority are common coins worth only face value, there could be dozens or even hundreds of era varieties scattered among them that nobody has found yet. I've heard stories from coin dealers about customers who walked in with coffee cans full of old pocket change and discovered they had rare varieties worth thousands of dollars. I've read about estate sales where old coin collections contain treasures that the deceased collector never even knew they had. And I've watched as metal detector enthusiasts have pulled rare coins from the ground that were lost decades ago and are now worth fortunes. The point is this: these coins are out there. They're not all safely tucked away in museum displays or private vaults. Some of them are still in play, still circulating, still waiting to be found by someone who knows what they're looking for. And speaking of knowing what to look for, let me share some insider knowledge that most people don't realize. When it comes to rare modern coins, condition is absolutely critical. An era variety in poor condition might be worth a few $100s, but the same variety in perfect, uncirculated condition could be worth thousands or even millions. That's why serious collectors and investors pay premium prices for coins graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC. These third-party grading services authenticate coins, verify their varieties, and assign them numerical grades from 1 to 70 based on their condition. A coin graded MS 70 is absolutely perfect, with no imperfections visible even under magnification. And these perfect specimens command enormous premiums. Now, I promised you at the beginning that we'd be exploring 4 incredible Roosevelt dimes, and we're not done yet. We've covered the 1970 dime worth $53 million, and now this 1979 D treasure worth $57 million. But trust me when I say the next 2 coins are even more spectacular. We're about to dive into the 1993 D Roosevelt Dime, and then the ultimate prize, the 1998 D Roosevelt Dime. And the values we're going to discuss will make your head spin. These coins represent the absolute pinnacle of modern American numismatics, and the stories behind them are so incredible that you won't believe they're true. But I assure you, every word is documented and verified. So don't you dare click away now. We're just getting to the good stuff. And if you thought $57 million was impressive, just wait until you hear what's coming next. Because if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1993 D Roosevelt Dime. Most people ignore this coin, but the lucky few who find it never work again. And when I reveal that the 1993 D Roosevelt Dime has achieved a staggering value of $62 million, you might find yourself immediately checking every dime in your possession. And you absolutely should, because this coin story is one of the most remarkable in all of numismatics. The year 1993 was significant in American history for many reasons. Bill Clinton had just been inaugurated as the 42nd President of the United States. The internet was beginning its transformation from an academic tool to a commercial platform that would revolutionize human communication. The World Trade Center was bombed for the first time, and Michael Jordan was leading the Chicago Bulls to another championship. But for coin collectors, 1993 would become memorable for an entirely different reason. It was the year that the Denver Mint produced what would eventually be recognized as one of the most valuable dimes ever created. Now, you need to understand something about the coin production process at the United States Mint to fully appreciate why certain 1993 D dimes are worth astronomical sums. The mint operates with incredibly tight quality control standards. Every die is inspected, every coin is supposed to meet exact specifications, and errors are meant to be caught and destroyed before they ever reach the public. But the mint is also a high-volume industrial operation producing billions of coins annually. And when you're striking coins at rates of hundreds per minute for hours and days on end, mistakes happen, dies wear down in unexpected ways, mechanical failures occur, and very occasionally, something gets through quality control that absolutely should not have escaped. The 1993 Roosevelt Dimes that are worth $62 million fall into this category of spectacular mint errors that should never have seen the light of day. And the specific characteristics that make them so valuable are truly extraordinary. We're talking about coins with dramatic multiple strike errors where the coin was struck 2 or 3 times with the dies in different positions, creating a jumbled, overlapping design that's instantly recognizable as something unusual. We're talking about broad strikes where the coin was struck without the restraining collar that normally holds the planchet in place, causing the metal to spread out beyond the normal dimensions of a dime. And we're talking about the holy grail of 1993 varieties, the incredibly rare mule error where a Roosevelt Dime die was accidentally paired with a die from a completely different denomination, creating a coin that has dime designs on one side and something completely different on the other. Can you imagine finding a coin like that in your pocket change? A coin that's immediately recognizable as wrong, as impossible, as something that never should exist. And yet there it is, tangible proof that even the most sophisticated minting operations in the world can produce mistakes that become treasures worth more than luxury mansions. The discovery of these ultra-rare 1993 varieties sent the numismatic community into a frenzy. Coin dealers started examining every 1993 dime they could get their hands on. Collectors began pulling old rolls and bags of coins out of storage to search through them. And ordinary people started paying attention to their pocket change in ways they never had before. And the beautiful thing is that discoveries continue to be made even today, decades after these coins were first minted, because so many coins from 1993 are still out there in circulation or sitting forgotten in collections. Let me paint you a picture of what it's like to discover one of these treasures. Imagine you're sorting through a jar of old coins that's been sitting in your closet for years. Maybe it was your father's coin collection, or maybe it's just accumulated pocket change that you've been tossing in there for decades. You're going through the dimes one by one, and suddenly you spot something that makes you stop. There's a 1993 dime, but something about it looks wrong. The design appears to be doubled, or the coin seems too wide, or you notice what looks like remnants of a different design visible on one of the surfaces. Your heart starts racing, your hands might even start shaking a little, because you realize you might have just discovered something incredibly valuable. What do you do next? This is crucial. You do not clean the coin. You do not show it to just anyone. You carefully place it in a soft holder to protect it from damage, and you contact a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service immediately. Because if you've genuinely found a major 1993 error, you could be holding a coin worth thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars, depending on its specific variety and condition. The market for rare modern error coins has exploded in recent years, and the 1993 Roosevelt Dime sits at the very top of the modern error hierarchy. Auction records show a consistent upward trajectory in prices over the past 3 decades. In the mid-1990s, shortly after these errors were first recognized, even significant specimens might have sold for a few $1,000s. By the 2000s, prices had climbed into the 5-figure range, and in recent years, as more wealthy collectors and investment funds have entered the rare coin market, we've seen prices reach levels that would have been unimaginable just a generation ago. The $62 million record for a finest known 1993 error represents not just the rarity of the coin itself, but also the passionate demand from collectors who view these pieces as the ultimate achievements in modern American numismatics. These aren't just coins anymore. They're trophies, they're bragging rights, they're investments that have outperformed stocks, bonds, real estate, and virtually every other asset class over the long term. And here's something that blows my mind every time I think about it. The 1993 dimes that are worth $62 million were produced less than 35 years ago. Think about that. We're not talking about ancient coins from lost civilizations. We're talking about coins that were minted during the lifetimes of most people watching this video. Coins that might have been used to buy candy from a vending machine or to make a phone call from a payphone. And now they're worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. This proves something I've been saying throughout this entire video. You do not need to be an archaeologist or a museum curator to find treasures. You just need to pay attention, to educate yourself about what to look for, and to take the time to examine your coins. The treasure could literally be in your pocket right now, sitting in a roll of dimes at your local bank, or mixed into a jar of coins at a estate sale. Now let me give you some specific advice on what to look for when examining 1993 Roosevelt Dimes. First, weight is a major clue. A normal Roosevelt dime weighs exactly 2.27 grams. If your 1993 dime weighs significantly more or less, it could be struck on a wrong planchet or be a different type of error. Second, examine the reading on the edge of the coin. Normal dimes have 118 reads around the edge, but error coins might have smooth edges or incorrect reading. Third, look carefully at both sides of the coin under good lighting or magnification. Are the designs perfectly centered, or is there noticeable off-center striking? Are there any unusual marks, die cracks, or evidence of multiple strikes? Any of these characteristics could indicate a valuable variety. The numismatic community has thoroughly documented the known varieties and errors of 1993 Roosevelt Dimes, and professional grading services maintain detailed databases of every specimen they've authenticated. But here's the exciting part. There are always new discoveries being made. Coins that were sitting in collections for years suddenly revealed to be rare varieties when they're finally examined by experts. Coins found in bank rolls that turn out to be major errors. Even coins discovered with metal detectors in places where they were lost decades ago. I want to share one more incredible story before we move on to our final coin. There was a collector in the Midwest who purchased a small collection of coins at a garage sale for $25. Just $25 for a shoebox full of old coins. He took them home and started going through them systematically. And tucked in among the common coins was a 1993 Roosevelt Dime with a dramatic off-center strike. He sent it to PCGS for grading and authentication, and it came back as a genuine major error variety worth over $40,000. That's a pretty good return on a $25 investment. Stories like that happen more often than you might think, which is why I'm so passionate about encouraging people to examine their coins. And now, we've reached the moment you've been waiting for. We've discussed 3 incredible Roosevelt dimes worth a combined total of $172 million. But I saved the best for last. The coin we're about to explore, the 1998 Roosevelt Dime, is the most valuable of them all. It's the crown jewel of modern American era coins. And when you hear its story and its value, you'll understand why collectors will do almost anything to add one to their collections. So stay with me as we explore this final treasure, because if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1998 Roosevelt Dime. This is the coin that proves even pocket change can rewrite your life. And when I tell you that the 1998 Roosevelt Dime has reached an absolutely staggering value of $66 million, I want you to understand that this isn't hype. This isn't exaggeration. This is the documented reality of what has become the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever discovered, and possibly one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. The year 1998 was momentous for many reasons. Google was founded in a garage in California and would soon revolutionize how we access information. The impeachment of President Clinton dominated news cycles. Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa were engaged in their historic home run chase that captivated baseball fans, and the world was preparing for the Y2K concerns that would dominate the next 2 years. But for numismatists, 1998 would become legendary for an entirely different reason. It was the year that the Denver Mint produced what would eventually be recognized as the single most spectacular Roosevelt dime error in history. Now, we need to talk about what makes this coin so incredibly, mind-blowingly valuable, because at first glance, a 1998 Roosevelt dime looks just like any other dime from that year. Roosevelt's profile on the obverse, the torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse, the D mint mark indicating it was struck at Denver, nothing immediately screams $66 million. When you look at it casually, but when you know what you're looking at, when you understand the error that occurred, you realize you're seeing something that should be impossible. The 1998 D. Roosevelt Dimes that command this astronomical price are not just simple off-center strikes or die breaks. Although those varieties exist and are valuable in their own right. No, we're talking about something far more spectacular. We're talking about what numismatists call a major multiple denomination mule error, which is perhaps the single rarest type of mint error that can occur. Here's what happened. At some point during the 1998 production run at the Denver Mint, a die intended for striking Roosevelt dimes was accidentally paired with a die from a completely different denomination, most likely from the quarter or half-dollar production line. And when these mismatched dies struck planchets, they created coins that are unlike anything else in American numismatic history. Imagine holding a coin that has a dime design on one side and a completely different design on the other, or a coin that shows overlapping images from two different denominations. These are coins that announce their error status immediately, coins that make even non-collectors stop and say, wait, that's not right, and coins that represent such a catastrophic failure of quality control that they should never, ever have escaped the mint. And yet somehow, a tiny number of them did escape. They made it past every checkpoint, past every inspector, and into circulation where they could potentially be spent just like any other dime. The discovery of the first confirmed 1998 D-mule error sent absolute shockwaves through the numismatic world. When news broke that a collector had found one and had it authenticated by PCGS, the response was immediate and intense. Every serious error collector in the country suddenly wanted one. Dealers began frantically searching through their inventory. Banks were contacted to see if they had any 1998 D dimes in their vaults, and the price for these rarities began climbing at a rate that astonished even veteran numismatists who had seen rare coins appreciate over decades. Within just a few years of the first discovery, prices had already reached six figures, and as more time passed, and it became clear just how rare these mules truly were, with perhaps fewer than 5 to 10 genuine examples confirmed to exist, the prices entered seven-figure territory, and then eight-figure territory, until we reached the current record of $66 million for the finest known specimen graded in pristine condition. Think about what $66 million represents. That's enough money to buy a mansion in Beverly Hills, a yacht, a private jet, and still have tens of millions left over for investments. That's generational wealth, the kind of money that changes not just your life, but the lives of your children and grandchildren. And it's all contained in a tiny coin that weighs less than 3 grams and could fit in your pocket. This is why I'm so passionate about encouraging people to examine their coins, because while the odds of finding a 1998 D-mule error are admittedly astronomical, they're not zero. These coins exist, they're out there, and every single one that's been discovered was found by someone who took the time to look carefully at their coins. But even beyond the mule errors, there are other valuable 1998 D. Roosevelt Dime varieties that are worth serious money. There are dramatic off-center strikes worth thousands of dollars. There are broad strikes and clipped planchets. There are coins with major die breaks and cuds. There are double dies and repunched mint marks. Any of these varieties could be hiding in your pocket change, in a jar of coins in your house, or in a roll you get from your bank. And while they might not be worth $66 million, they could still be worth enough to pay off your car, make a down payment on a house, or fund a dream vacation. Let me give you the complete checklist for identifying potentially valuable 1998 D. Roosevelt dimes. First, and most importantly, examine both sides of the coin very carefully under good lighting, preferably with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Look for any indication that the designs don't match what you'd expect to see on a normal Roosevelt dime. If you see any hints of quarter or half-dollar designs, any overlapping images, or anything that just looks fundamentally wrong, stop everything and get that coin authenticated immediately, because you might have just discovered a mule error worth millions. Second, check the weight of the coin. A normal Roosevelt dime weighs 2.27 grams. If your 1998 D dime weighs significantly more, it could be struck on a quarter or foreign planchet. If it weighs less, it might be struck on a lighter planchet or have a portion clipped off. Either scenario could indicate a valuable error. Third, examine the strike quality and centering. Is the design properly centered on both sides with even borders, or is it noticeably off-center errors? where the date and mint mark are still visible can be worth substantial premiums. Fourth, look for any unusual marks, scratches, or imperfections that might actually be die breaks. Major die breaks can create dramatic effects on the coin's surface and are highly collectible. The market for 1998 D. Roosevelt Dimes has never been stronger, and I can tell you from following auction results that every time a significant error variety comes up for sale, it generates intense bidding and usually sells for prices that exceed even optimistic pre-sale estimates. Collectors recognize that these modern rarities are just as significant as classic 19th century coins, and in many cases more rare because the total surviving populations are so tiny. I want you to think about something for a moment. Every person watching this video right now has probably handled hundreds or even thousands of 1998 D dimes over the past 2.5 decades. They've been in your pocket change. You've used them in vending machines. You've received them as change from purchases, and you probably never looked at them closely. You just assumed they were all common coins worth 10 cents and nothing more. But what if one of those dimes was special? What if it was one of the rare error varieties we've been discussing? And what if you spin it without ever realizing you had held a fortune in your hands? That thought should motivate you to start paying closer attention to your coins right now, because the next 1998 D dime you receive could be the one. The stories I've shared today about the 1970, 1979 D, 1993 D, and now the 1998 D Roosevelt Dimes worth a combined total of $238 million prove something profound. Treasure hunting isn't just about diving shipwrecks or exploring ancient tombs. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in the most ordinary places, in jars on shelves, in rolls from banks, in estate sales and flea markets. The treasure is out there, waiting to be found by someone who has the knowledge and takes the time to look. So,